Hi, my name is Gary Dillon, and I'll be responding to M.E. Kaufman's argument that the United States was not justified in bombing Japan. I wanted to begin by addressing her first point that the Japanese invasion of China didn't negatively affect America. At the time in 1941, parts of China were being occupied by the UK and France. America and Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, who was the president at the time, supported what was known as the open door policy regarding China. That meant that they wanted to keep a door open to do business with China, and Japan's invasion of China threatened that open door by cutting off access to Chinese goods to Western markets like America. Also, China was a big market for America to sell things like petroleum and tobacco. America would buy things like silk, tea, and art from China. So there's a lot of business going on between both countries, and that was going to get put in jeopardy by Japan invading China because it would just put everything into uncertainty. Um, your next point, the next point was that Japan was justified in some extent in their attack on Pearl Harbor because FDR placed an oil embargo on Japan before the attack. Choosing not to do business with a country isn't a justification for that country attacking you, which is what Japan did when they attacked Pearl Harbor. Kind of a similar situation would be like when Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. Joe Biden, who was president then, banned the sale of computer chips to China because he didn't want to Russia rather because he didn't want those to be used to make weapons to help them invade Ukraine. Now, with America banning the sale of chips to Russia, that doesn't somehow give Russia justification to attack America. America doesn't have to sell someone something if it's not in their interest, whether it's computer chips or oil or what have you. It was pretty much going against America's interest to sell Japan oil if it was going to threaten their relationship with China to do so. And FDR, being the president of America, had the same right to do that then, the way that Biden just did 3 years ago to Russia with the computer chips. And Japan, I think, was wrong to retaliate against America by attacking Pearl Harbor for the oil embargo. It's not a proper justification. The next point that was made was that FDR was somehow baiting Japan into attacking America, attacking Pearl Harbor with the oil embargo. There's never been any credible proof that FDR knew that Japan was going to react that way by attacking Pearl Harbor. And placing an oil embargo is something that he was well within his rights to do, as I mentioned earlier. While America was doing more business with the Allies than the Axis powers, that's kind of just a natural thing that occurs between global powers, especially with the UK and France making up the Allies. I mean, those countries have much longer, older relationships with the United States than Germany and especially Japan did. So it would make sense for America to support the Allies in the war, but there was never any indication that FDR knew that Japan was going to attack Pearl Harbor or that he let it happen to look for some kind of excuse to get into the war or anything like that. Nothing like that has ever been credibly proven. It's sort of similar to the fact that Russia is being sanctioned right now by many countries for their invasion of Ukraine, and Iran is being sanctioned for having a nuclear program. But the countries that are sanctioning Russia and Iran don't expect to be attacked by them for doing so. The next point that was made was that America's relationship with the Soviet Union was damaged by America's secrecy around the nuclear program and then dropping the bomb, that somehow caused the Cold War. I think that the Cold War would have happened anyways because Stalin decided to occupy a lot of Eastern European countries after World War II was finished. He decided to continue to occupy those countries, and instead of having free and fair elections, he imposed communism on them. So that way he could make them into buffer countries in the Soviet Union. His idea was pretty much that he was worried about another Western European army like Germany or France invading Russia again, particularly Moscow, which is close to Russia's western border. And and Stalin wanted those Soviet buffer states so that if those countries tried to invade again, they would have to fight in countries like Poland and East Germany and Hungary instead of fighting in Russia. And that went on to become known as what's known as the Iron Curtain, those Soviet buffer states. And I think most people would agree that those actions were the catalyst that started the Cold War and not America's bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The final point that was made was that excessive civilian casualty death toll could have been avoided by not doing the atomic bombing. There's been a lot of research and debate around this subject, but from everything that I've read, all of the credible research has proven that more Japanese civilians would have perished if America just did a long traditional ground invasion of Japan. It's estimated that somewhere between 5 million to 10 million Japanese civilians would have lost their lives if America did a firebombing and traditional ground invasion of Japan, which would have also taken years as well. And it would have resulted in between 400,000 to 800,000 casualties on the American side. And again, 5 million to 10 million Japanese, which is just a really, really high number. It's estimated that the number would have been so high because the Japanese would have really resisted an invasion and they would have formed local militias to resist as much as they could. And through the bombing itself, 250,000 people did lose their lives, which is huge number. I mean, nothing like that before that had occurred in history. But I mean, it's still nothing like the 5 to 10 million that would have been estimated in a regular ground war. So I think it's clear that, I mean, while still not great that America had to drop the atomic bomb, it's still, I think, preferable to 400,000 to 800,000 American soldiers dying, and also 5 million to 10 million Japanese, which, I mean, it would have taken the country decades to recover its population from something like that. So while still less than ideal, America was justified in bombing Japan. It still resulted in a lower death toll than a traditional ground war would have. And that's why I think that America was justified in its actions. Thank you.